I call this meeting of the Pearland Independent School District Board of Trustees to order on December 12th, 2017 at 5:06 p.m. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that a notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. Let the record show that trustees Beegler, Gooden, Floyd, and Decker are present. Murphy, Mr. Berry, and Mr. Botkin are absent. All right, so we are going to do public comment. This is the portion of the board meeting where the board receives input from patrons. Each person who addresses the board will have 5 minutes to speak on his or her issue. Because of topic posting requirements of the Open Meetings Act, board members will not ask questions of the patron and will not answer any question posed to the board by the patron. No action can be taken on any issue presented during this patron comment segment of the board meeting. Patrons or patron addressing the board will be notified when they are approaching the last 30 seconds of their allotted time. All right, so Mr. McLeod. Mr. McLeod? Nope. No, Mr. McLeod. Aaron McLeod. No? Okay. Mr. Barrett?
Good afternoon.
Good
I'm going to try to talk into the mic this time. I think last time I didn't. I just wanted to say good afternoon to the superintendent and the school board members. First, I want to thank God for blessing us to see another day. I want to thank God for blessing us to see one another again. And I want to thank God for having a chance to speak to one another again. I would like to start by thanking you for your support in helping me with the matter I spoke to you about the last school board meeting. So I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you. And I had a scripture that I wanted to read to you and to show my appreciation. I think it kind of relates. And it says, and one of them, when he saw that he was healed, turned back and with a loud voice glorified God and fell down on his face at his feet, giving him thanks. And he was a Samaritan. And Jesus answered and said, were there not 10 cleansed? But where are the 9? There are not find that return to give glory to God, save this one. And he said unto him, arise and go thy way, thy faith has made thee whole. So I'm gonna be short today. And I want to close by saying thank you, superintendent and school board members and support staff, for the wonderful job that you do to make Pearland ISD one of the best school districts in the state of Texas. And I hope that you enjoy the rest of your time, and I hope you enjoy the rest and time with your family during the Christmas holidays. If God says the same, hope to see you at the next school board meeting. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. McLeod, you're here now? Okay.
Apologies if I missed my cue earlier. I stepped out.
It's okay.
All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and distinguished members of the board. My name is Aaron McLeod. I am the co-founder of Pathways to Greatness, also known as Intervene. We are approved vendors with Pearland ISD, and we're local. We're down the street. This evening, I just wanted to briefly just introduce our company and a solution that we would like to pilot with Pearland ISD and also eventually get purchased by Pearland ISD. What we've created is a software called, a solution called Data Dash. When this is done, I'm gonna pass out the flyers to you all that walks through it. But I know you can't necessarily see it from there. But, okay. Our solution was developed by teachers for teachers. A lot of times, most of the time, teachers are presented with data, 13, 14 pages of data. And from that, they're supposed to perform instruction. However, anyone that knows that's been in the classroom realizes that there's a lot going on along with teaching. So when you're presented with that much data, sometimes it's a challenge to segment that, synthesize that, and use it. What we've created is a one-page segmentation of what's going on with your students in a particular classroom. And at the top of the page, you'll see a readiness summary. So those are your most heavily tested. And forgive me, this is a math solution, a math intervention solution. But you'll see at the top there on the right-hand side is your readiness summary. Second is your score summary, breaks down where you are. And apologies that this is a brochure type print. If you print it on regular paper, it's a little more clear. Some of the ink is splurged a little bit. Anyway, there's recommendations on whole group reteach based on over 50% of your students not performing in a particular TEK, and then a small group reteach based on students that are performing under 50%. And you'll see it breaks down the students by the TEK. This is a very small test. We have pacing tests that we could develop for Pearland ISD from September to December, full STAR test, 3-week test. It really doesn't matter. We just need to sit with you and understand what kind of pacing, and when I mean pacing, I mean paced to the academic calendar of Pearland ISD. And lastly, what I want to bring to your attention is our misconceptions. We've identified the top 5 misconceptions, and this is where we're innovative. In a question, a STAR test, you'll have one question and multiple that are incorrect, but incorrect with purpose. And if you go to the STAR release test, you'll see that there's misconceptions, but maybe they added X or they multiplied. What we've done is identified and broke down those misconceptions or distractors. And we've segmented your students so you can quickly see that 75% of your students have this misconception. So when you do your whole group reteach, focus not only on the whole group teach, but focus on the misconceptions. Those are low-hanging fruit that will quickly allow you to bring up the performance across multiple TEKs. This is an online test. The students log in, very easy, very user-friendly. Again, this was built by teachers for teachers, so this allows them to have their own data. And so when they go to their planning sessions, they sit with their administrator and they say, okay, this is how we're going to address these TEKs. This is how we're going to bring up our performance. I'd love to sit and chat with you all in more depth. Again, we are interested in piloting with you. We're doing it with a couple school districts, and we'd like to pursue doing it with you. We cover 3rd through Algebra 1, all the STAR tested grades. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Again, we're intervene.
Okay. Mr. Fulis?
It's been a tough couple of months in Pearland ISD. 2 suicide attempts in the space of 2 days. One at home and successful, the other at school, resulting in a life flight trip to the ICU. A news story about a 6-year-old Muslim child with Down syndrome being reported to the authorities as a terrorist threat. Another report of a potential case of measles. The discovery of Patrick Kelly's Facebook page, along with the realization that he is well armed, lives in the community, and has been to these board meetings in the past. All of these situations are regrettable. All of them, sadly, are cause for very legitimate concern by the parents and students at Pearland ISD. We want to know that our community and our schools are safe. We want to know that our community and our schools are treating children fairly regardless of their faith. We want to know that our school district isn't doing anything that could be contributing to the risk of suicide by our teenagers. We want to know, and this goes right back to the speech I made several months ago at Mike's swearing in, that our school district is placing the welfare of our kids before everything else. To my knowledge, Dr. Kelly's response to these events thus far has been an internal email and one rather condescending blog post decrying the inaccurate reporting and false portrayals in the news and on social media and criticizing certain parents for believing them. The only parents worthy of his praise are those that support him in his, quote, beliefs. He points out, quite rightly, that the media doesn't always get the story straight and that the district is limited by the privacy concerns of the affected families and what they can say about these events. His advice? Well, I'm sorry to say there really isn't any. Kelly ended his post with a very religious letter of praise from a parent regarding non-specific actions by one of our principals, which I'm sure were admirable. And that's it. No specifics about what was wrong, and nothing about any action being taken whatsoever. Just a shot of fake news and a strong implication that we should just ignore these stories and trust that everything is fine. Where have we heard that before? So what would be better? You may not be able to give the personal details to the public, but you can still challenge something false that appears, that appears in the media. And no, sending a correction to the news outlet by itself is not enough, as even when corrections or retractions are printed, they are rarely ever seen by the public, and correcting social media is virtually impossible. It is not practical, nor is it our responsibility to monitor every story we read to see if it changes. But it is your responsibility to keep us informed as you can about issues of concern related to our schools. Show us the correction letter that you sent to the media. Do what you can to allay our fears. Why not? When you say that there are no confirmed cases of measles, that leaves people with a lot of questions. Does that mean not yet, and testing is still being done, or does it mean that we've conclusively determined that there was none? Are we being as aggressive as we should be regarding vaccinations? Apparently, the story of the Muslim child did not involve a Pearland ISD substitute teacher. Is there any other part of that story that was inaccurate? Has the district faculty ever had cultural sensitivity training? Do they know that the word Allah is simply the Arabic word for God, derived from the Hebrew word for God? Is now the time to have that training before things like this get out of hand and a child is harmed? Where is the district's attempted suicide rate in comparison to the rest of the country? Are we talking to students to see what pressures may be driving them in that direction? Are those pressures related to homework load, lack of sleep, or other factors that the district or even the parents can address? Lastly, and believe me, as a father, I fully understand that this may be very painful for you, Dr. Kelly, and you have all of my sympathy in that regard, and I am in no way judging you based on the actions of your children. But if there is anything that you or your son can do or say to assure us that he is not a danger to the community, please do so. Help us, Dr. Kelly. We understand the perils of modern media, and we know that privacy has to be protected. But we need good information on what's happening in our schools. We are not the enemy. We are the
30
customers
seconds.
of your service, and we have entrusted our kids' safety to you. When tragedies happen, we need to know that action is being taken to make sure that they don't happen again, and not just defensive complaints about how unfairly the media is handling the stories. Since you are only accountable to the public via the trustees, I also call upon them to make sure the appropriate action is both taken and communicated. On the other issue regarding the welfare of our students, it has now been 3 months since I invited those board members that had not met the little girl being denied bathroom access to go and meet her, and still none have done so. Thank you for your time.
Ms. Boystick? Is that right? Okay.
I had not planned on speaking. This is the first time I've attended the board meeting. To be better educated with regards to our school district. Thank you for listening to me. I don't have anything prepared, but
Okay.
what is of interest to me is over the past couple of weeks or months, there has been negative news reports. I don't know how accurate those news reports are All I do is read the headlines at this point in time. But I do know that you most likely have to operate within legal constraints based upon what the legislature puts in statute. And I don't know the intricacies of the education code either. But what I would like to say to you, Dr. Kelly, is thus far, myself, along with many other parents, appreciate the hard decisions that you have to make, that this board has to make for our students, especially in light of criticisms and other obstacles that you may encounter. But I just want to say thank you for your service and for making hard decisions that really impact our students and for protecting our students. And that's really all I have to say on an unprepared speech.
Thank you, Ms. Boystek. Marion Boystek, B-O-I-S-T-E-K. Ms. Shi?
Good afternoon, everyone,
Hello.
and happy holiday. Thank you for decorating this room so nicely. I want to make a public comment about the recent events that has taken all of the parents in surprise and shaken the community. And I'm also very grateful that as a community overall, we're able to come back together, support each other, and just like Harvey, we managed to come around. I especially want to thank and compliment Dawson Principal Ms. Holt, the chief counselor, lead counselor Ms. Bruce, in their effort and to make the situation as easy as possible for the parents and also for the students. As parents and also as a healthcare professional, I am very concerned about the high mental stress that's going on in the school, especially among the high-performing or talented students who are so-called superachievers. It has been becoming a national phenomena, the amount of academic pressure and peer pressures the students are facing. So there are several, in fact, New York bestsellers books published on this subject recently. As a school, and in fact, as a leader of the schools in Houston, I believe that we have to start to talk about these issues and have open dialogue as far as what we can do. I'm very grateful to what the district is working on this front. For example, Ms. Chanda Moore is leading the I Ask Suicide Prevention Program, which is happening exactly in the appropriate time. And we wholeheartedly support such program. Moving forward, I know the district and also many of the school campuses are working such issues. And we suggested that we come out to form the parent support group, students clubs, and also improve the communications, as I have written as an email to some of you. And thank you for your positive feedback as well for my email. So, for example, survey or improving the communication between the students and the teachers, and also between the school and parents, and how we can best come out as a community to work on this issue together. Thank you so much, and have a happy holiday time.
I hope I do not pronounce this wrong. LaShawn Jayasekera? Is that right? Close? Okay.
Thank you, members of the board. I come before you this afternoon as a parent and not as a lawyer, but a concerned parent of a 12-year-old who's facing, with his peers, a lot of pressure and concern for this incidents that we've heard about, the suicides, the attempted suicides, the terroristic threatening calls to the police. I urge you to please review and revise your training policies and procedures with your staff, and maybe communicate that out to the parents that you guys have this, you have it under control, you have a plan to remediate these things. Because if we don't do it soon, I can tell you on the flip side, and I urge you to discuss this maybe in closed session with your lawyer. What are your plans for defending claims against both private in the administration in their private capacity and their official capacity for claims against civil rights, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and those kinds of issues. So, you know, the last thing we want is to lose money and resources at the same because of a lack of preparation. And I really urge you to put your thinking caps on, come up with a plan, and then communicate it out to the family so we can reassure our children that as adults, we're taking care of this situation. Thank you.
I know I'm gonna pronounce this wrong. Raja Mutha. Will you say it for me, please, sir?
Sure. It's Raja Muthupillai.
Okay.
Good attempt.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I know I'm here standing in front of you as a parent of two daughters who go to Pearland ISD. They're both, one is in Dawson, the other one is Pearland Junior High West. You know, the most precious resource that a community has is its children. And we send these children to schools. They probably spend more time at school than in the households. When an event like a suicide or an attempted suicide comes across, you often wonder. The real causes are multifactorial. It could be issues at home, it could be issues at school, it could be issues elsewhere. But there is a responsibility that we as parents entrust to the leaders in the Pearland Independent School District to make sure that these kids are safe, not only for their academic and educational performance, but also to look at where and how they are doing emotionally, and we can grow them as good citizens. So that is a responsibility, and that is a shared responsibility. What I would like to ask is, when an event like this happens, instead of hiding behind privacy issues or other things, we can be proactive and come up with solutions and engage the community to look for possible actions. To do it as business as usual, have a counseling session, and continue the classwork as is not acceptable. First thing that we don't have is transparency. What I would like to see is that how does the Pearland Independent School District's suicide attempts, self-harm, compare with national averages? There are no privacy issues. Where do we stand? Is this something that we are doing better or worse? Without that metrics, we will never be able to solve these problems. First of all, we have to understand them. When you go to the local counselors, they say, and it is unproven, that the incidence of self-harm among Pearland Independent School District students is very high. Is it true? We don't know. So we would like to encourage you to get out of your comfort zones, get out of the defensive mode, and engage the community, talk to the parents, talk to the local counselors, convene a meeting, find out what is actually going on, and get standardized reports and give it to the community. That will reassure the parents that it is not coming from the school district. So what I would like you to do as a group is to engage with the community, ask the local counselors, get some data, and start putting it out. So what I would like to see Dr. Kelly directly respond to this is to send an email to the entire parents of the independent school district to say where PASD stands in terms of any self-harm, suicides, and other things compared to other school districts. It is not to blame the PASD, it is just to understand who our students are. After all, these are the students that we aim to educate and to treat. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Steve, that is all.
Madam President, during public comments, the school board may not respond, except in cases where you are giving out direct information or where the item is listed elsewhere on the agenda. Provided if you want me to, I can read the statement we sent to everyone who asked us with regard to the incident at Harris Elementary. Everyone who asked us, all media outlets that asked us, etc.
for it that's already been published?
Oh, I mean, it's the letter that he sent to us and then to everybody that has asked for it, the media
So
outlets
it
and,
was
mem-
sent, I mean, it's been published in,
Yes.
in the media and
Mhm.
newspapers?
Mhm.
it's already been out there.
And it's been publicly published, correct?
Yes. Also, I would point that on some of the other issues brought up, maybe read our website. And also, Mrs. Hocutt, our Director of Communications, has just showed me an email or a skyword today that is going out on the very issues mentioned by some tonight.
That's fine, all right? Okay. All right, we're just gonna,
Okay, I'm good.
We do have contact information for all the speakers, correct?
correct, in the book, yep. So we can at least send a message. Okay, so the Board of Trustees will adjourn into closed session at 5:32 p.m. No voting will take place in the closed meeting. Any action the board wishes to take as a result of the discussion in closed session will take place after the board reconvenes in open meeting. Okay, the board will reconvene in open session at 6:15 p.m. No action was taken in closed session. You want to go with opening remarks, sir?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all very much for coming. I will be brief so that we can get to.
You want to make your remarks first?
I can.
You just
Yeah, I'm just
Okay.
rogue board member. Okay, here we
board
go.
member today.
What I was going to say is that it has been a rough couple weeks in Pearland ISD, and I wanted to just a few people and a few things that have come across my desk here is that former board member, y'all may know Glenn Garrison, is he's been fighting cancer for a while, and he's unfortunately in hospice care now. Florida Dodson is a former board member here. Her husband, she lost her husband to cancer about a month or so ago. We have the student that we lost at Barry Miller, and we had the attempted suicide at Dawson. And I just wanted to, while I have the floor, send a message of support to our families, to our students, to all our staff and our administration as we continue to fight against the things that would take our children from us. To our counselors, teachers, admin, students, from the board, one board member can never speak for all, but I am confident saying that we all support you and that we are looking forward to doing everything we can to fight this thing, right? So if you would please stand with me, we will open up with the pledges and we'll get started. Pledge allegiance to the
flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. Pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one indivisible.
If y'all please be seated, that concludes my remarks.
All right, and then we're going to get up and do
Board recognition.
There we go. All right. Good evening. I'd like to invite parents as your student comes across. Feel free to come up here, grab a photo as they're coming across. This is your moment, so please come get those photos that you would like. Pearland Independent School District is home to some of the most talented students in the state. And now comes the time that we like to recognize our students for their achievements. Again, parents, feel free to come take pictures at any time. Tonight, we're so proud to honor some of our high school students who stand out in national scholarship and recognition programs. Thanks to high PSAT scores, these students may qualify for scholarships and have their names and academic information sent to U.S. colleges and universities. First, we recognize our students who were recently designated as commended students in the National Merit Scholarship Program. These students rank in the top 5% of more than 1.5 million students who took the PSAT in 2016. Our Dawson High School commended students include Samuel Clogan. Students, when I call your name, you can go ahead and walk across and shake hands. Curtis Lee. Frederick Lewis. William Lee. Leah Matthews. Emma Simmons. Shinni Zhu. And from Pearland High School, Remington Ballard. Next, we honor students who met the highest standard on their advanced placement exams. This year, Pearland ISD is proud to boast 556 students who achieved scholar status, an increase over last year. Our first students to be recognized are AP scholars with distinction. These students earned an average score of 3.5 on all AP exams and a score of 3 or higher on 5 or more exams. From Dawson High School, we have Reese Allen, who's also a National Merit Commended student. Yusef Asabai. Cade Anderson. Connor Anton. Barath Balabaskar, who also is National Merit Commended. Sean Bohannon. Julian Carter, who's also National Merit Commended. Grace Chen. Oh, you are? Okay. Oh, and Kevin Chen, who's a semifinalist. Cameron Chokey, who also is National Merit Commended. Tyler Cutshaw. Molly Ellinger. Rachel? Okay, Rachel Farquharson. Tharika Ganesh, who's also National Merit Commended. Elizabeth Hong. Claire Jeffries. Jason Jang, who's also National Merit Commended. Alec Labiga. Grace Liu, who's also National Merit Commended. Julie Liu. Catherine Lua, who's also National Merit Commended. Abigail Moore. John O'Banion, who's National Merit Commended as well. Anna Pham, National Merit Commended also. John Seabach. Also National Merit Commended, Catherine Smith. Tabitha Tran. David Wang, also National Merit Commended. Emmanuel Yamba. Jennifer Yu. And from Pearland High School, Amna Ibrahim. Sorry about that, Amna. Rachel Kimball. Juan Moreno. Abigail Mullins. Dylan No. Zachary Scruggs. Sarah Shoka. And Abigail Thornton. Our next students represent students who are national AP scholars. National. They are less than 1% of exam takers worldwide to receive this recognition. These students achieved an average score of 4 or higher on all exams and scores of 4 or higher on 8 or more exams. From Dawson High School, Jared Chen, who's also National Merit Commended. Ashish Dave. Anthony Lim, who's also National Merit Commended. Jacob Roy, National Merit Commended. Sharuthi Srinivasam. Kyle Stacks, National Merit Commended. Tonight, we also recognize several students who've been named National Hispanic Scholars. Students must be 1/4 Latino or Hispanic and achieved at least a minimum PSAT score for their region. Students with grade point average of 3.5 or higher are designated as scholars. Only 5,000 students nationwide received recognition this year. Our National Hispanic Recognition Scholars include from Dawson High School, Eric Oliveras, who also is an AP Scholar with distinction. Kayla Hammond, who's an AP Scholar with distinction and National Merit Commended. Robert Leal. Taylor Lindsay, who's AP Scholar with distinction and National Merit Commended. Maria Mendez Garza, also earning AP Scholar with distinction. Is it Pino? Jacqueline Pino, AP Scholar with distinction and National Merit Commended. Is it Thames? Tyler Thames, AP Scholar with distinction, National Merit Commended. From Pearland High School, Emma Ambro, AP Scholar with distinction. From Turner College and Career High School, Alexander De Jesus. Good. Each fall, Pearland FFA students have a strong showing at the Brazoria County Fair. This year was no exception, with several of our students bringing home championship titles. Tonight we have from Pearland High School, Samantha Lucas, Reserve Breed Champion ORB Heifer. Is it Tyra? And Cade Tyra, Grand Champion Market Lamb. And working with these students is ag teacher Jared Lynch from Pearland High School. Next, we have some athletic accomplishments to recognize. This fall, several students advanced to the UIL State 6A cross-country meet. We're pleased this evening to recognize these students. From Dawson High School, Darby Gaunt, who finished 5th place at regionals and advanced to state. Darby is coached by Patrick Zarati. And from Pearland High School, finishing 3rd at regionals and advancing to state, Miss Kara Decker. And finishing 7th at regionals and heading to state, AJ Tyler. And their coach is Demetrius Peters. And finally, every year our administration selects one student's artwork as the featured design for the district Christmas card. It was a tough decision this year, but the 2017 artist was chosen from Turner College and Career High School, Christian Escato, and his art teacher is Valerie Torres French. Congratulations again to all of our students. This will give them all another round of applause. Thank you so much.
The Board of Trustees is going to adjourn again into closed session at 6:34. No voting will take place in the closed meeting. Any action the board wishes to take as a result of discussions in closed session will take place after the board reconvenes in open meeting. So we'll be right back. Okay, so the board will reconvene in open session at 7:15 p.m. No action taken in closed session.
I have a motion. I move we accept and approve the superintendent's recommendation for employment of personnel as presented.
Second.
Okay, a motion by Ms. Beegler, second by Mr. Gooden. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor? Motion carries 4 for it and 3 absent. Okay, also in closed session, the board reviewed an appeal of a student assignment to JJAEP for a drug-related offense, and the board is standing behind the recommendation of administration. Okay, now, on to you, Ms. Kiki.
Okay, I just want to say thank you. The vision of a few students in 2011 when they met with Dr. Kelly is that we would introduce a class called AP Comparative Government and Politics. And Dr. Kelly's vision for expanding that trip to global learning experience for students started in 2014 with 13 students, 17. And this year we'll have 121. And next year, it'll include students from Turner High School as well, and we've expanded that focus from AP Comparative Government to multiple classes that have a global focus. And I have some students who will speak to you just very briefly and a short video presentation, and I have one short little story. As we were boarding the plane in Frankfurt for the second leg of our trip last year, going to Budapest, some gentlemen were talking, wanting to know about the group and the students. And said, well, they're students from our school. He says, public school? And I said, yes, public school. And he says, well, who pays for this? And I explained the support, the incredible support that we've received from our superintendent and our board of trustees, which is not like any other program that I'm aware of. And I explained that to him and how we had opportunities for students who cannot afford it and their parents cannot afford it, and we still find a way to help them have that experience. And he says, I love America. You care for all peoples. And it's just one of the most heartwarming things. The kids were wonderful. They always return with a greater appreciation for their own culture, their own country, the government, the laws. The way we do education here is very different than anywhere else in the world. And we educate every student, and they have just a deep appreciation for their own country and a better understanding of everyone else around the world. So thank you again for the opportunity, and I'll turn this over to our students.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, ladies, that we kept you here so long. You can tell your teachers that we kept you. Not that that's going to matter,
They won't
but
care.
Hi, I'm Kristen Russo, and first off, I would like to thank the board for the opportunity for the trip to Central Europe. And the most memorable part for me was the trip to the UN, getting to visit all aspects that they do there, and it even inspired me to look into a future career there and see what I can do with that opportunity.
Awesome.
Ms. Kayla.
Hi, I'm Kayla Daigle. Okay, kind of short. Okay. I'm Kayla Daigle. I would like to thank y'all for the trip we took this summer. It was awesome. My most memorable moment was when we visited the concentration camp. It really brought to life all that I've learned all these years, and just being there was so surreal. Also, going to Germany to the castle and getting to see the Swiss Alps was the most stunning thing I've ever seen, and I can't forget it. So it was awesome, and thank you.
Thanks.
I'm going to show you guys a quicker than the long version video of our trip this summer. 57 students from both Dawson and Pearland High School traveled with us. So I'm going to let the video do its work, and I'll come back to you when it's completed.
My house in Budapest, my hidden treasure chest, golden grand piano, my beauty focused EOU. Ooh, you, ooh, I'd leave it all.
That's going to be me next year.
My acres of land I've achieved. It may be hard for you to stop and believe, but for you, ooh, I'd leave it all. Oh, for you, ooh, I'd leave it all. And give me one good reason why I should never make a change. Baby, if you owe me, then all of this will go away. My many artifacts, the list goes on. If you just say the words, I'll up and run. Oh, to you, ooh, I-D-V-Do. Oh, to you, ooh, I-D-V-Do.
So what have 3 years of travel meant to you?
It's really made me open up as a person and be more social and outgoing. It's especially made me kind of reconsider how I see everything. Your perspective really changes when everything isn't just Pearland, Texas. It's this country and the countries that are surrounding it and all that. There's so many different cultures that you don't get to see usually.
So as a 3-year veteran traveler, what have you gotten the most out of your travels?
What have I gotten the most? Pretty much just seeing every other country, how they like live compared to us, and even how much like we like as Americans rub off onto their culture. Like if they're wearing like main brand American clothing and stuff, it's cool to see them living like that. Also seeing how like the governments work differently.
All right, Marcus, what was the biggest surprise for you in your first international trip?
Biggest surprise was how friendly the people were when we got here, and the scenery. The scenery was amazing. That was the best part, hands down.
So you've traveled quite a bit internationally, correct?
Yes.
Is this your first big group travel experience?
Yes.
So what's the difference for you?
Okay, well, when I travel, like where I go, I usually go with my family. I'm usually around my family the entire time, but when I'm with a big group, I'm around my friends, and it's more fun, and I can do a lot more here because we're all in a big group and we're going to multiple places.
So as one of the more active students in school, starting quarterback, member of the baseball team, you've had a pretty full high school experience. How has this enriched and extended that experience?
Well, it's one thing to learn the culture of of a school, of your own country, and how things work, but to learn and to grow as a person even more farther from that, you get to go overseas and learn how other people live, how their culture works, different food, different languages, everything, and it kind of puts things in perspective and not belittling something that. Like high school, it's a big deal, but it's still something that's, there's so much more to it. There's so much more to learn. And coming on a trip like this, it allows you to see these different angles and to learn these different things about these different places.
Hope when you take that jump, you don't fear the fall. Hope when the water rises, you build a wall. Hope when the crowd screams out, they're screaming your name. Hope if everybody runs, you choose to stay. Hope that you fall in love and it hurts so bad. Oh, yeah. The only way you can know, give it all you have. And I hope that you don't suffer, but take the pain. nights you spend your days, but they all add up. Oh, when the sun goes down, hope you raise your cup. Oh, yeah. I wish that I could witness all your joy and all your pain. Until that moment comes, I'll say I did it all. I did it all.
Just a small town girl living in a lonely world. She took the midnight train going anywhere. Just a city boy, born and raised in South Detroit. He took the midnight train going anywhere. A singer in a smoky room, the smell of wine and cheap perfume. For a smile they can share the night. It goes on and on and on and on. Strangers waiting up and down the boulevard. Their shadows searching in the night. Streetlights.
Why is that? Why would you, if they're playing a game, why would you want to stop your kids right in the middle of the game? If they're playing tag or if they're playing real, they want to do it again next time. If you let them finish and you let them play it out, they'll never want to do it again. And that's exactly what this tour is. Explorers don't always settle down. They're constantly exploring. So remember, think about this when you get older, get a chance to come back to Munich, and guess what? You could be the tour guide. You can be that person. Oh yes, absolutely. You can be, absolutely. That's what it's all about. Because you've been here before, you've done that, and you got the shirt to prove it.
I really, truly hope that you had what you will be able to take away from you as a very lifelong memory, something that you really can't replicate because of who you're with and where we were. Or I hope that because of this experience that you want to gain a more international focus, you want to travel again. How many of you, based on this experience, would like to see more of the world and go travel more? Yeah, that right there is why we do this, to enrich you, to make it more cultural for you. so that you have a broader global vision. How many of you have had your eyes open to things like, I can't believe it's like this other places? Some of you who
Don't stop believing. Hold on to that feeling. Street light people. Don't stop believing. Hold on. Street light people.
Thank you. So that's just a little insight into the experience. I mean, you can't fit everything that we did in 12 minutes of video. You just can't. What you really can't see there, and you can a little bit, but to have the conversations we were having before our ladies came up and spoke to you, was they're like, we need to figure out a way that we can go again. And we talked about some options. Heard about wanting to work for the UN. We have several students in the past who are now doing study abroad programs in college as a direct result of these experiences they've had with us. And so thank you for providing this for our students. It's hard to be world class without going into the world. And so that's really our mission, and it's an enrichment. Looking forward, we are set up for 2018. Like Ms. Gigi said, we have about 120 or so between student and chaperone travelers headed to Rome, Athens, and then there is a portion of that, about 75% of that, continuing on a 3-day Greek island cruise where they'll see Santorini, Mykonos, which is the birthplace of Greek civilization, Patmos, which has some significance as well, and 2 other islands that are escaping my memory right now. Anyways, we have those kids going. We are working very hard with our tour company that we contract with, EF Tours, to increase their experiential learning for our students. This was 5 countries and literally 8 days on the ground, so there was a lot more seeing than doing. We are working on setting up a Roman cooking class, a Roman art class, a Greek marble sculpting class, a visit to a Greek orphanage as part of the next tours. As we expand beyond that, we're going to Japan in 2020. Nope, I skipped a year. 2019, we are taking a group to England and Scotland, Japan in 2020, and we will bring on the 2021 trip very soon. We plan that far in advance so the students can enroll early enough that it's cost effective for them that way. So that said, do you guys have any questions of us before I step away?
Every year I'm amazed by like the trip and the stories that come back and the experiences the kids have, and it's always exciting to hear where you're going next, right? So, I mean, just with everything that happens with the AP scholars that came up earlier, it's just that I see my own 2 kids doing this, and I can't wait for their year, right? So, thank you guys for the effort, and I'm glad it's been such a success.
It has. I mean, from 2014, from 17 students to well over 100 5 years later. And it's not an inexpensive program for us or for parents. And so it's an investment. But it's a great investment that changes perspectives and changes lives.
We're excited to have Ms. Biegler join us this summer.
I'm excited. I'm very excited. But thanks for all the hard work you do. I know this takes a lot of work. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Great job.
I'm going to get our kids out of here so they can go.
Yes, they can go
Good
study.
luck.
Test
Yeah.
tomorrow. Yes, good luck.
Right, we have the consent agenda. Can we do
Yes, let's do that.
consent agenda first?
Anybody have anything to pull?
I have one.
Okay.
I wanted to pull the update 109, I believe. Specifically, my issue with this update, everything seems like it's more of a reaction to the session, right? So they have to write policy, so we have protocol, I guess, for what the state's telling us to do. But my issues with section CKE, the safety and program risk management security personnel, and the issue regarding SB4. Basically, this policy would add a new provision permitting a peace officer in the course of an investigation to inquire about the nationality or immigration status of a victim or witness to the offense in certain circumstances. My issue with that is I don't know if we should be bringing that kind of divisive politics into our schools. I don't think the Show Me Your Papers law, which SB4 is, I think it's still held up in court. So it's not even on the books yet. There's a speculation whether or not it will even find its way into law. I read through the rest of the policy, the update. There's the provision regarding the firearms in the cars, but that just seems, that's not the most unreasonable of requests. But this SB4 provision, I find a particular opposition to.
Yeah. Well, one reassurance I can give you on that particular SB4 is that I talked to Sergeant Beavers twice about this, and he's just very clearly said that he trained all of our officers on this at the beginning of the year, and basically there is no reason why an SRO would ever ask the immigration status of a student. Now, if that student is arrested for criminal behavior and they go to the regular court system, then that's beyond our control.
Right.
But our people will not be, our police officers will not be asking the immigration status.
And I get that, and I appreciate that, and I agree with that. But the issue is that this is putting it to policy now. So, 10 years from now, if it's still in the books, Sergeant's not there, we're not here.
But Michael, I think that I have to go back and look, but I think that's a legal policy, not a local?
It is a legal policy, right?
Well, the deal on legal policies is that we're not really passing those. In other words, the legal policies are things that we're required to have, but they are the same across the entire state. And so
The only ones that we have
we
any
only
control over are the local.
And so, TASB explains that to us. We're giving you the legal because that covers you as the law requires, but the only ones that you have jurisdiction over are the local. And that's really when you pass 109, you're only really passing the local ones. The legal ones are already in force.
Mike, that's an interesting catch because the language of actual SB4 exempted.
Right, it did.
School districts and police officers who were working on, public school campuses from that.
Right. But there was, I think what Michael's referring to, and I remember too, there was one provision in there where there's somewhere where it could be relevant, and that's the reason for its inclusion in the policy. I don't remember the wording.
They've now made it that education code. Legal is education code.
Well, but my point is this: it should not be law. I don't understand how TASB is putting this into effect because SB4 is not in the books yet. It's upheld in the courts. This is on page 12 of that update. I don't know if we should be, and I certainly don't think we should be allowing any kind of room for anyone in our district to find an excuse to question the immigration status of any student.
Yeah, I think what Michael's reading from, at least in the summary, is it says, also at powers and duties, new provisions permitting a peace officer in the course of an investigation of a criminal offense to inquire about the nationality or immigration status of a victim or witness to the offense in certain circumstances. And then it puts in parentheses SB4. That's the description. I don't have the actual policy language in front of me, but
Let me ask you, Dr. Kelly, can we
look at that.
pull just that one and have our
Well,
Ms. Dawson
remember,
look
you're
at
not passing the legal.
Right.
They're automatically. But what I could do, if you want me to, is consult TASB Legal and say, do we have an option to somehow specify in local policy, more strident language that says we will not ask for the immigrant status by our police officers, something like that. I don't know all the law. I don't know.
Can a local policy trump a legal policy?
It could clarify a legal policy. In other words, it may say that, well, the legal says that they have permission, but the local says that we do not intend to use it, or I don't know.
But I guess my issue is not about our circumstance, our relation with the TASB legal, but if this is even allowed to be in this update, because SB4 is not a law, it's not in the books, it's upheld in the court.
Yeah, I don't know.
So is there any way we can just say, scratching this certain provision, approve the rest of the update?
Wait until we hear back from our attorney, or?
Well,
I think that with legal,
I'd have to read the the introductory, I don't have that in front of me, but it basically very clearly says, you know, you're not really passing the legal, you're only passing the local.
Right, and even the way the recommendation for the, to approve it tonight, it only says about, local policies.
So maybe, Michael, you passed tonight's update 109, noting that these are local policies only that you're approving, and then maybe raise the objection that you have concerns about the legal policy and would like to see us look into it.
My concern, though, is that if we pass it,
But
that-
I think what he's saying is, we don't have any
have a
control
choice.
over legal, so
right,
legal's
but I
gonna
think
show
we
up
also we
no
have a
matter what we
symbolic
vote tonight.
symbolic stance to take,
I
a
got
more
you. I
moral
understand
stance to
that.
take.
Right.
So there's no way we can just scratch out or just, is there a way we can make a point to clarify that we're looking at this specific
And if we don't
part?
pass this tonight, Dr. Kelly, can it be looked at and come back next month?
There's
Okay.
no, I'm trying to find the exact language here in your motion.
Motion reads to add, revise, or delete local policies.
Local
as
policies.
recommended
But there's
by
nothing,
tax
I mean, there's nothing serious if we don't pass this tonight that
No, that's
wouldn't.
true. I mean, I'm not in that big a hurry.
Okay.
There's no hurry.
So what is our
Yeah, just,
plan
just
to?
talking about local policy.
Yeah, just refers to local.
So
But we could
what is our
pass the
plan
local.
to?
Seems,
I just need to raise the objection surrounding
I
the
completely
implementation of
understand that, and I
SB4.
think it's a valid point. So either that, or we can table it, you can get more information for us.
Yeah.
And then we can do it for,
yeah, either
For
way,
January.
either way. You're
That's-
either passing
prefer
local
that.
policies or not, or
Okay.
waiting.
is that okay, board?
Well, I'm okay gathering more information, definitely on the legal, and I understand where Michael's coming from, but no matter what, unfortunately, the legal, we don't vote on.
I know.
I mean, so even if we come back with an
Right.
answer that is not happy, and is something you're gonna agree with next month, we won't be able to do anything about it, unfortunately, so.
I just
it's
have
coming from
questions about
somewhere else.
the legality of that actually being in this update. Maybe,
And I understand that as well, too.
Yeah.
I mean, if it hasn't passed, how can they be putting into legal policy in a school district, or all school districts?
But it's not gonna harm us to wait for 1 month to get more information.
Okay. I'm okay with that.
Okay.
So
I
we're
make a
going to
motion to. Well, I guess we are just in
Leave it off the consent agenda
Right.
vote?
So,
Right, so we're removing it from the consent agenda, right?
thank you.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I will make a motion to approve the consent agenda items 1 through 4.
Motion made by Mr. Gooden.
I'll second that.
Second by Ms. Beegler. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? The motion carries 4-4 and 3 absent.
Okay, Madam Chairman, Madam
Okay,
President, I will make a motion to postpone item 5 until the January 2018 board meeting.
Second.
so the motion made by Mr. Gooden and a second by Mr. Floyd. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Okay, motion carries 4-4 and 3 absent. Okay, so consent's over.
All
So
right.
The only thing, oh wait,
Madam
the board
President?
report, I'm gonna do my board report as far as our hours.
Oh, okay.
It's easy.
And we also have a GMP issue to look at before we get to the.
Oh, yeah,
demographic
that's right,
report.
GMP. Okay, hold on. Let me just do this real quick. All right, all of the board members have exceeded the required continuing education training. Ms. Beegler and Mr. Botkin will complete Tier 1 tomorrow.
Or I will. Hopefully Lance is back in
Right?
town.
Right.
I'll be there.
You will be there. Yep. Okay, so that's that. And now we're gonna do the item,
GMP.
oh, sorry. What do we have, new business, consent? E1.
Yeah. Well, let me make one clarifying comment on what you just announced, Rebecca.
Oh, with
The-
our.
Yeah, the law has changed on when you have to report board training hours. It's changed from, in our case, from December to April. Before the May board election. And so what this did tonight was give an update on that. but we will do the actual new law requirement to do that again in April. And we're just covering ourselves by doing the old law and the new law.
Yes.
Okay.
Covering both.
The whole law.
All right, so we're back at GMP. Yeah, please come forward, John. We're looking at the guaranteed maximum price amendment to the contract. Now we're ready to go on the GMP for Junior High West, Salvatore Middle School, and Jamison Middle School. John.
Right. Well, the information here is basically self-explanatory, but we are at, this is the GMP for those three schools. We packaged them all together, and we did see some savings. We're about $894,000 under budget for this part of the work. So the GMP is $29,798,680, and for those three projects. So we've got a Stantec here and Duratec. Duratec is ready to go if the project's approved. So I wanted to see if anybody had any questions.
Is there a presentation from the architect, or no? We just
well,
got the
no.
dollars?
If you recall, we did that in the schematic presentation.
We did SD.
Right.
So
that's when we do the
right. But I guess my question is more directly: has anything changed between SD and now?
No. So there's a scope sheet here where we itemize what the scope is, just to kind of check off that we fulfilled all the bond scope. Along the way, there was a few kind of collateral things that made sense to do, so, but we wanted to account for them separately, so we put those in what we call the adjustments on these three.
Okay.
This is package D, right?
Yes. Now this is most of package D.
Most
There's
package,
another
right.
chunk which is going to be Junior High East. That's the other part. That'll be in April.
Right.
Good news is, again, we're continuing to be under the projected budget.
We're under budget. Overall on the bond, we're still tracking about 19 million under budget. With this project, we have about a third of the total bond cost identified as bid numbers. In February, we'll be bringing Turner High School and Pearland High School, and that'll be another third. So by February, we'll pretty much know what 2/3 of the bond costs are going to be.
Those stands at Pressner, was that a part of West, or was that a part of East? Because we talked about maybe taking down the visitor side stands at Pressner, and I forget which project that was a part of.
That was part of West.
That was a part of West.
So
Okay.
yeah, there were 3 tennis courts in the bond in West and in East. So we're combining them into one field of 6 tennis courts, where the visiting side of Pressner bleachers are now.
Okay.
Is that correct?
The stands are going down. Okay. And I guess the floor plan, the overall layout that we saw about where the placement of the new gym is going to be, taking down the big, the outdoor, the canopy, not taking it down, but that's all. It's all what we saw in SD.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. At West, the bond called for repainting that canopy that's in the courtyard at West, but that's actually where the new admin is going to go. So
Exactly.
we're actually moving the courtyard. We're going to do a covered canopy
Right.
behind and open the cafeteria up to that. So
Okay. I guess that was the most extensive of the 3. $894,000 below budget.
we think we saw the savings by combining the projects, and we think that we definitely got good sub-participation, so we got good numbers there. We still think we're ahead of the market curve with these, and we'll see when February comes around with that next round of projects if we're still doing well.
Any other questions?
All right, I move that the board approve the GMP amendment to the contract with Duratec for a sum not to exceed $29,798,680 for services related to the 2016 bond project in package D.
Second.
I have a motion made by Mr. Floyd and a second by Mr. Gooden. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Okay, the motion carries 4 and 3 absent. Thank you.
Good.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, John.
All right.
Last but certainly not least, we have Mr. Templeton here. If you'd come forward, Bob. And we're ready to receive the demographic study that he's been working on for several months. Take it away, Bob.
Good evening, Board President, members of the board, Dr. Kelly. It is my pleasure to be with you tonight. I get to attend, 40 or 50 school board meetings a year, and I always get to see something a little unique. And I really enjoyed seeing your student trip. My children were fortunate to get to take similar trips. And I can tell you, it is contributing to a change in the birth rate. You're going to kind of laugh at that. But I have a 26-year-old and a 24-year-old, and they're, our son is married, our daughter's about to be married, and what do they save their money for? Travel. And they can't wait to go back to, the places that they've been, and it truly is a neat experience, and it truly has opened them up and helped them in their careers and in their lives. Well, tonight I will briefly touch on the economic conditions that are affecting the greater Houston area. We're going to spend a good bit of time talking about the housing market, and then ultimately we'll get to our latest enrollment projections. Well, no doubt the Houston economy has been under a little bit of duress for the last several years. It's been primarily related to the oil industry, so the unemployment rates have risen over the last several years in the greater Houston area. The unemployment rate for the Houston area is at 4.8, but when we look specifically at the Pearland region, the Pearland region's unemployment rate is 3.5%. So this specific area, we're seeing very healthy economic growth and activities. The job growth rate for the greater Houston area is at 1.1%, so it's still a little bit below the national job growth rate of 1.6. But the good news is it is positive now. So, that number of 1.1% represents about 34,589 jobs that have been created annually as of September. The housing market is expanding, so we're still building a significant number of houses across the greater Houston area. The annual start rate is 27,713 new homes. We're definitely in the top 5 cities in the country for new home starts. Now, one of the unusual factors affecting the housing market was the hurricane. Harvey definitely had a huge impact on housing. It's estimated that roughly 30,000 to 40,000 homes were destroyed in the greater Houston area. Approximately 100,000 homes were damaged from the hurricane. Also, about 105,000 apartments units received substantial damage. So this is definitely having an impact on housing in terms of occupancy rates have risen up, the rental rates have risen. The effect on labor related to the housing market is in short supply. Materials are likely going to become even more expensive. So the cost of renovations, the cost of new housing, going to continue to be increasing related to the increase in material and the short supply of labor related to construction and renovations. Now, some of the local job growth opportunities that we're seeing, now this is just outside the Pearland School District, but I wanted to highlight that because we do believe this job growth is going to provide, new families potentially moving to the area. Lasagna Expansion, it's a Swiss pharmaceutical biotech company. That's likely going to add several hundred jobs, and these are engineers, biotech professionals that will be added over the next 10 years. ToolFlow, there is an expansion groundbreaking there that will likely add also about 150 jobs in management, engineering, sales, operations. Those are on Kirby, just south of the Sam Houston Toll Road Parkway, and so just outside the school district, but it's the kind of jobs that are coming to the area. Now, I wanted to mention the road construction expansion. Definitely right now it's a little bit of a challenge with mobility, getting around the edges of Pearland, but it's about a 97 million construction project which began this past summer, slated for completion in July of 2019. Once that's completed, we'll definitely continue to help with mobility moving in and around Pearland throughout the Houston area, which mobility does have an impact on where families decide to relocate. Another road expansion project that's within the city of Pearland, the McCard Road expansion. It is a city of Pearland project. The extension is intended to reduce traffic off of FM 518. The project is slated to begin mid-2019 with a 2021 completion. We also think this is going to help kind of open up some of those kind of infill, smaller tracts of land that we could see some redevelopment or some new development in some of those smaller tracts. I've got a slide a little later on in the presentation where I'll outline where we think some of this infill development could take place. Now, going to kind of a global Texas look at, these are school districts across the state of Texas. We have over 1,000 school districts in Texas, and our enrollment across the state has steadily been growing. In October of 2016, enrollment in Texas schools was 5,359,000. You'll notice between 2006 and 2014, we've been growing about 80,000 kids a year. And starting in 2015, actually, the growth slipped to 67,000. And again in 2016, it slipped again to 59,000. And that drop in the enrollment growth occurred all at one grade. It occurred at kindergarten. So across the state of Texas, for the first time 2 years ago, we saw a decrease in kindergarten enrollment across the state. And it is related to the change in birth rates that I touched on earlier. The millennials, which are ages 18 to 30, have delayed forming households. They've also delayed having their first child, and it's being pushed back. It is thought that they are going to have similar birth rates, but they're just waiting until near 30 and into the early 30s before they start having the children. And so that is slowing down kindergarten enrollment across the country. When we look specifically at Regions 4 and Regions 6, you'll notice that Pearland, if you can, is right here. So here's the Pearland School District. You've got Alvin growing to your south, a lot of growth out in Fort Bend, Lamar, and we've had, steady growth in the Pearland School District. In the last 5 years, ending in 2016, we've added 2,380 students during that 5-year period. So we've had a 5-year growth rate of 12.4%. When we look at new home construction, Pearland ISD is ranked 17th in the Houston area. Annual starts, and that's when a foundation is poured. We've got 362 annual starts as of the second quarter, and we've got 378 closings. We have 243 vacant developed lots available for builders to build on today, and we've got about 454 futures. Futures are preliminarily platted land. It's some future phases of some developments that are already active. And so you've got about, I'll say, 2 to 3 years of supply of what we know about, but we've also got several hundred acres of smaller tracts that over time are going to develop, but I'll categorize them as smaller, 50, 70 lot developments. You're not going to be seeing the 500 to 700 lot type developments in the future because we don't have those really large tracts of land. Here's how that new housing is happening by quarter. You can see in the first 2 quarters of 2017, we started about 168 homes. I think we're going to be on pace to do over 300 new homes again in 2017. We've closed 188 homes. And a closing is when our survey team actually observed the home being occupied. Here's that new home activity based on your current elementary attendance zones. The red elementary zone is closing more than 75 new homes a year. Those orange elementary zones are closing between 51 and 71 new homes per year. And then those yellow zones are closing between 1 and 50. So you've got growth scattered throughout the school district. We've also mapped the top 10 subdivisions based on annual closings. So you've got about 344 homes in these subdivisions. So literally the activity can be found primarily in the top 10. Now what you're going to notice is you can see we're starting to run out of lots in some of these neighborhoods, But, you know, Canterbury Park, they've got 130 futures, so they've got at least two more years of building about 70 homes a year in Canterbury Park. You can see Avalon Terrace in the Lawhon Elementary Zone. They're building about 40 homes a year. They've got 73 vacant developed lots, so about 2 years worth of building there. This next map illustrates where the vacant developed lots are. So out of the top 10 subdivisions that have vacant developed lots, we've got 240 vacant developed lots listed in these top 10, but it's primarily in 4 neighborhoods. It's Avalon Terrace, it's Baker's Landing, it's Massey Lake Estates, and Afton Lake. So this is where we're going to see the new home construction in the next 2 to 3 years. So you can see Avalon Terrace here in Lawhon, and then you've got Massey Lake, Baker's Landing. And so this just gives you a sense of where the housing is going to take place in the next 2 years. And then futures are those lots that are going to be coming down the road. A little bit different pattern here. We've got 2 elementary zones that have more than 100 future lots. Magnolia with Canterbury Park has 130. Stonebridge Phase 2 has 91. And then Baker's Landing has 78. Midtown Magnolia with 60, and Baker's Landing Townhomes 48. So this is what we use to help us with those forecasts for those elementary zones beyond 2 years. Now this is just looking at the data by elementary zone again. This is a table form, but what you'll notice is when you look at the start activity, we're literally building houses in about 6 elementary zones. You've got Magnolia, number 1, with 72 annual starts. Then Shady Crest 56, Lawhon 51, Harris 51, Cockrell 42, and then over here on the far right side of the table, this is where the vacant developed lots are and where the futures are. This is just another way to look at that single family data. Those green are active subdivisions that are building homes today. The yellow are the futures. Now, I'm still showing this development, although we have removed it from the calculations and removed it from our data because we know that both school districts have approved that boundary change related to that development. Some of the details on some of the most active neighborhoods: Canterbury Park, 461 total lots. There were 3 homes under construction. The groundwork is underway on that 130 lot future development here. So we do know that in the spring they'll have the lots delivered, and so we'll see the housing continue in Canterbury Park. The builder is KB Homes. That price range is $210 to $260. The current yield in that neighborhood is 0.82 students per house. Baker's Landing, which is located in the Harris Elementary Attendance Zone, 239 total lots. The groundwork is underway on 58 future lots, which should have delivered this past October. Building about 100 homes in 2018. That is D.R. Horton. That price range $250 to $400. That price student yield is 0.61 students per house. Avalon Terrace, 529 total lots. There were 20 homes under construction during the second quarter. 73 vacant developed lots. 260 to 345. The yield in that neighborhood is 0.6 students per house. Massey Lake Estates, 82 total lots, 14 homes under construction. Meritage Homes, they're building 30 to 40 homes per year. A little more expensive homes, 315 to 440. That yield there is 1.19 students per house. Lake Park Townhomes, 274 total lots, about 40 to 45 units under construction. The Brownstone is the builder, and it should be built out by the end of 2018. Could have a low yield here because it's a townhome, so it'll be more of a lifestyle for the families that are choosing to buy those townhomes. And then just to highlight again, Massey Oaks, we know that has been rezoned to Alvin ISD. Now, I mentioned this earlier. What we did was through the appraisal district records, we highlighted all of the parcels that are roughly larger than 5 acres that are coded as vacant. So you can see the road expansion that's going to take place up here, this McCart. We do believe that could open up some of this area and make it a little more accessible to that infill type development. But you've got roughly 3,000 vacant acres that are highlighted in this green color tone here. That could produce over a 15-year period an additional 4,000 to 6,000 lots. Now keep in mind, when we get to this point, this can take a long time. So you have families that own this property. A lot of times it has to get to the children before some of those will turn over and start to develop. But this is what, it kind of looks like, in that you could see, infill development, but it's scattered all throughout the district. And some of it will depend upon the zoning that's in place. Some of it will also depend upon the access to utilities. But over time, we do believe it's going to allow you to continue to grow at a healthy rate. You're not going to see rapid growth because we're not going to see those 500 lot type developments. These are the 20 to 50 lot type developments that you could see. Now, looking at the yield analysis, we geocode your students every year, and this is looking at your apartment yields. You've got about 1,594 students that reside in about 4,000 multifamily units. So your average yield across the district is 0.38 students per unit. You've got one apartment complex that's yielding greater than 0.75 students per unit. And then you've got several that are yellow, which are yielding between 0.25 and 0.5. And then you've got two that are yielding between 0.5 and 0.75. So the takeaway from this is some of these units over time, we could see an increase in yield as they age, but compared to a lot of school districts, you really don't have a high number of multifamily complexes. This is not, a majority of your students are going to continue to come from single family. Now, you also have some mobile home communities. You'll notice a significant difference in the yields from the mobile home neighborhoods. You've got about 886 students that reside in roughly 950 manufactured homes, and many of these neighborhoods are older. It's a little more difficult to get new manufactured housing zoning approved, so you're not likely going to see an increase in manufactured neighborhoods. But your yield in the mobile home communities is 0.95 students per house. That's pretty common for manufactured housing neighborhoods because it is some of the more affordable housing in the district. One of the things we also look at when we do a geocode is we compare the geocode to previous geocodes so that we can get an idea of how many newcomers. A newcomer is a student's ID that is brand new to the district this year. So we had 1,913 newcomers this year, and you'll notice in 2016 we had 2,035. So we had a little bit of a decrease in newcomers to the district. You can see by grade where those newcomers are the highest. Of course, first grade, very high numbers of newcomers in first grade, also high numbers of newcomers in 9th grade and 4th and 5th. Now, leavers are the opposite. We are also comparing the student IDs that are missing from this year's geocode compared to last year's geocode. And we had a little bit of an increase in the number of leavers this year. We had 1,734 leavers compared to the 2016 number where we had 1,648. It's a little bit challenging for us to determine, well, what caused the increase in leavers. Now, keep in mind, you've got over 20,000 kids in your school district. So this is a very small percentage change related to the change in leavers. It could have been related to Harvey. It could have been some displacement from damaged homes. But when you combined the decrease in newcomers and the increase in leavers, we saw a change of about 208 kids. That's roughly about the change that we saw in the decrease in your enrollment forecast was likely a result of a few less newcomers and a few more leavers. This is looking at the newcomers and leavers, specifically the leavers by grade level. You'll notice we did have a few more leavers in first grade, But all in all, most of the grades tracked pretty closely. Overall, we did see a few more leavers in 5th, 6th, 7th, but your high school, you actually had less leavers in high school than the previous year. Now, here's looking at your enrollment projections. We did a demographic study for you 2 years ago. In 2015, we did a demographic study, and we actually had you in that 15-16 report. In the 16 year, we had you growing about 350 kids, and last year you exceeded our forecast by growing about 492 students. This year, you actually came in under the previous forecast. As I mentioned, I think it's a combination of a few less newcomers, a few more leavers. The other thing that I would point out is the kindergarten number. So this year's kindergarten class is the smallest that we've seen in the last several years. So the kindergarten drop is a function of the change of birth rate. So it's a slowdown that we're seeing across the state. In many school districts, the kindergarten number is declining. You also had a decrease in pre-K. So this truly was the biggest change in the enrollment for this year, was the decrease in kindergarten and pre-K. The new projections are calling for an increase of 5-year enrollment growth of 683 students. That'll put your enrollment in 2022 at 22,324. So this is a little bit of a change from the report that we did in 2015. So it's a combination of a slowdown in kindergarten related to birth rates. I would also add, we're seeing a slowdown in young families moving to areas where there's new housing because the new housing is getting more expensive. In 10 years, we could see enrollment growth of 1,190, which would put your enrollment in 2027 at 22,831. As I mentioned, I do forecast that you're going to see steady growth, even though we're going to see a slowdown in housing in the next few years. I do think there's going to be enough infill developments to keep your new housing growing over the 10-year period as some of that vacant, smaller tracts of land turn into future housing. At the campus level, well, let me back up. One other thing I want to point out is you can see the change in kindergarten dropped here. We've got an increase in our 12th grade class. So we are getting top heavy with larger classes up here in these high school grades. Now look at the grade distribution. 6th grade, almost 5th grade, all the way through the 12th grade, we've got over 1,600 kids per grade. But when we start to look at these elementary grades, we've got 1,369, 1,495, 1,570, so in 1,674 in 4th grade. So next year's elementary grades, we're going to see a decrease in enrollment, but it's primarily because of graduating this large 4th grade class. So this 1,674 moving up into the intermediate middle school grades, combined with the fact that we've got smaller kindergarten classes, is going to cause these elementary grades to decline over the next 3 years. I wanted to point that out as we get into the elementary projections. Now, what you're going to notice is the yellow is when they exceed capacity. We've got Magnolia Elementary. It's over capacity right now, and it's going to be at about 860 next year. You're going to notice it's declining. The reason it's declining is it's graduating some large classes. So those large classes moving out and the smaller incoming kindergarten classes, even though they're building houses, is what is causing this pattern to where the enrollment is declining for a couple of years. And then it starts to pick back up. Another one that I'd point out would be Rustic Oak. It does not have the small kindergarten versus large 4th grade going on right now, but you can see it kind of fluctuates down a little bit in 2019, and then it climbs back up, and in 2025 it gets to potentially about 771. I would encourage you to really focus your attention on the first 5 years of the forecast and not get too concerned with the back 10 years, the last 5 years, because there's a lot of things that can change that can cause the enrollments to either increase or decrease. At the secondary level, here's the middle school outlook. You'll notice that Jameson gets to about 936 in 2020. At your junior highs, you've got Pearland Junior High East that gets to about 958, 953. There again, you'll notice when those large classes start to work themselves through those intermediates and junior highs. And then when we get to high school, Dawson High School gets to about 2,600 students by 2022. And then the Pearland High School gets to about 3,300 in 2022, and then it climbs to just almost 3,400 students by 2025, 2026. I do know there's going to be an expansion to Dawson, which will likely take care of this overcrowding at Dawson. I believe that's going to take place in either 2019 or 2020. There's also going to be some additions that I believe are going to be taking place to help you at your junior high level, and possibly I think there's some classroom expansions at Jameson as well. As I summarize, you are likely going to see continued growth. Overall, you'll notice that you're going to be growing up to about 22,300 students in 5 years. So that's steady growth. I would also add that you've got some a little bit more space at your elementary campuses to work with, at your intermediate middle schools. It's going to be Jameson that's going to get near its capacity during this 10-year forecast, and then junior high east and south potentially have capacity concerns, but I believe there's some expansions that are going to help with that. And then at the high school level, you've got expansions for Dawson, and I'm not sure, there may be some expansions for the Turner College as well. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Templeton. I appreciate it. I'm going to jump right in and ask if we could get this particular spreadsheet updated with the capacities for the schools that we're going to be. So can administration give that information to Mr. Templeton and we can get that updated? Great.
Certainly. What we can do is we can highlight the year that they're going to open, the expansions are going to take place,
right,
and then adjust the capacities to reflect those additions and changes.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you very much. All right. Anybody else want to jump in?
I just want to go back and look at page 20. Can you go back one page to the elementary? Okay. I just kind of wanted to look at where we are on the west side of town and talk about that a little bit. Particularly Challenger, Silvercrest, Silver Lake, and then Lawhon. So Silvercrest, I mean, it's pretty much
It's at capacity.
right now, but it looks like very near future that those numbers are going down a little bit at Silvercrest.
I would say
Not Silver Lake, Silvercrest.
one of the challenges with capacity is to keep in mind you need to have a little bit of a buffer, because what happens is at a grade level you can get a little bit over at a grade level, and that causes you to have to add a section, and then you're
Right.
so when you look at capacity, when it gets within about 10%, it's probably full.
Okay, and that was going to be how I wanted to see, so we could explain that. What is a good number to say, like that 10%? Is that the magic number that we play off of and say, when we get to 10%, then it would not be, okay, that's what it said. Just so we can start explaining this as time comes up, when people are going to be asking about if we're going to rezone or not.
Both schools are at 92?
92%? They're close.
So, but we're seeing most of our growth actually in the middle part of town.
Yes.
The far west side looks like it's completely developed, the Silver Lake, Silvercrest area. My question is, when we look at the zoning for our elementary schools, we've heard a lot about the Sunrise Lakes community being divided in half. We saw that up there. If you go back a couple slides, you saw that there was a clear division, even right here, between the Lawhon side, Challenger side. And there were some interesting zonings. We've heard a lot about it for the middle school and junior high school. Does this update, Dr. Kelly, change or add the potential for us to change those lines to?
I don't want to go too far, but we've talked about the potential for a change. The difficulty is when you look at any one particular subdivision is the number of kids from that subdivision and how that impacts as you go forward. And I think Mr. Tillis has begun looking at that.
So do we have that specific information regarding that? Because I'm looking around and I don't see many other subdivisions cut off, as directly as that one is. Most of them follow roads, but that one goes right down in the middle. Do we have that specific information for specifically that region, the Lawhon that's cut off, southern part of that area?
We know exactly how many kids live in all of these neighborhoods. So, and we can definitely help Mr. Tillis and the district with what if you do this,
Yeah.
what would the impact be?
See, you look at it first blush and you say, well, for sure, Challenger can handle additional folks. And Rogers doesn't look too bad. This is my initial just look at the numbers. But Barry Miller still presents a problem. And got to look at the number of families geocoded to that subdivision and others around it.
Well, Barry Miller actually didn't look that bad in the
Well,
5-year look. I don't want to look at
Let's say you add 40 kids. And, I'm speaking off the top of my head. We have not yet even started that analysis other than to start looking at that.
But so
Don,
it's not
Mr.
only
Tillis.
right, and I understand that it's not only Challenger though, because it looks like you have a lot of growth happening in this Lawhon area. It looks like it's going to continue to grow. The Silver Lake area, though, looks like we've established is kind of declining a little bit.
Well, and that's kind of where I was going with this whole
Right.
thing. I mean, the west side is not growing, so I mean, if you, same thing, that's where the magic number is, where are the kids technically? When you start moving lines, where's that gonna put them? And then can you get some of the kids on the west side of town closer to their actual schools that they live by? I understand that, but there's a lot of factors that are gonna have to go into that to think about, to make, because you don't want to move the lines and then have to move the lines again
Right.
a year or two later.
So what's the
I mean,
timeline for us to kind of have that solid information?
You want to take a gander at that, Don?
I think now that we have this information, we can go and count the number of kids in that particular neighborhood and then see what impact it would have on Rogers and Barry Miller Junior High and see if it's going to create, we don't want to move a problem from one area to another, but we do the evaluation. I think we could, figure that out fairly quickly, a few weeks.
Okay.
I'd actually, yeah, okay. Are there any other neighborhoods that have expressed any of the same issues, like being so far away from the schools that they, are we just talking about Sunrise Lakes when we talk about that?
I know that we've heard some complaints there. Mr. Parton's been here a lot longer. I don't know if he's heard other neighborhoods that have complained, but I think most of the complaints have come from that one particular neighborhood.
Okay.
I drive 25 minutes.
Can you go back a slide to where I think there were stars indicating our campuses on the map? That way we could better visualize right here. So it's the red stars are elementary schools.
Right. Yes.
Blue stars are high schools. It looks like. Well, no. That can't be right. Dawson's blue.
What do the stars mean?
The dark blue, I believe, they may be secondary campuses. The orange are looks like the intermediates, or the middles, and the greens are the junior highs.
Yeah. What's confusing is you're going by the names of the elementary zone.
Yes, we got the, yeah.
That's right where that particular school is. For instance, Carlston is right there where it says Carlston.
But those other two schools on the left are gonna be Rogers and Barry Miller.
Right.
And then down the road is Massey Ranch, right,
Right.
gotcha, okay. And then obviously,
And we may have, I think the street labels are covering up. Is there a campus right
Yeah,
here?
no, Massey Ranch is that.
that's Massey Ranch, yeah.
Go a little bit
Oh, Pace is the one by
Ah,
over there in
Pace.
blue.
This probably
It's
shows all the
Pace.
colors right
That's what I'm
here.
about. Why is there blue in there? Okay,
You
so
got Harris, you got East, and then Pace,
Pace, West.
and Salvatore.
Right.
So that covers all the colors
Right.
there.
So right now, with specific regard to the Sunrise Lakes community, they are going from near Challenger to
They go
To
to
Lawn.
Lawhon.
Yeah.
They go to
Lawhon.
Jameson.
Jameson.
and
Okay,
they
see
go-
that's the
and then
Jameson's
they
the.
go to East. West. I'm sorry, right. West.
Oh, Sab.
Oh, is it Sab?
So it's Lawn, Sab, and West.
Okay.
So that is a bit far. I mean, that's 518 traffic. I mean, that's not fun. And we'll see what the McCard Road does with expansion to Lawhon, but I would like to see, and I think all of us would, a little bit closer
Well, if
commute
possible.
for the folks.
The problem is, it's still, when they go to the south side of the district, those campuses are full. So even if the elementary situation works out where they could go to, maybe to the elementary closer to them, they may not be able to go to the middle school and the junior high closer to them, just because.
The layout of Pearland is interesting in that we have two junior high, I mean, the people from Rustic Oak have to drive 20 minutes. I mean, we had to drive 20 minutes to East.
Oh, can't hear you. That's what you're saying.
When we drive from the Rustic Oak area.
Sure.
I drive that.
Yeah, it's 20
so I
minutes
drive
too.
20 minutes, 25 minutes to school too. So it happens to be that,
Okay, I had some questions about the report. 'Cause I found some of this data very interesting. When you talked about the Pearland area unemployment rate being around 3%, like, is that just our city limits, or do we
Yes.
include just the city limits?
It
Okay.
is.
All right. And, we've got a lot of employers out there on the west side. One of our main drivers is the medical center,
Mhm.
right? And so the medical center hasn't slowed down. That hasn't, and so, that's going to continue to be a driver to this neighborhood. And our 5-year rate of growth, you mentioned 12.5%, right? So I guess where does that put us in relation to the districts around us?
The districts around you have so much more vacant land that they literally are building thousands of homes. And so, Alvin and Fort Bend, it's just it's a sheer vacant land issue.
One of your slides, I think, illustrates that very well near the beginning of your presentation.
Yeah, it
where
had Alvin is
where
over
you had the futures.
16,000 future
Yeah.
lots or
Yeah.
something.
Futures.
Right there,
There
that
you
one.
go. Okay.
I mean, compare Pearland to Alvin.
Right.
Good gravy.
16,000 future lots that are already, in the preliminary plat, that are in the process to be delivered.
Right.
And you've got Fort Bend,
They're
which
right there.
is number 1. And then you've also, I guess Lamar is not too far away. But yeah, that really does kind of tell the tale that what's happening is you're running out of the major, the D.R. Hortons and the KB homes. They don't do the little infill stuff.
Right.
And so then who'll be coming next will be a little bit more custom. They'll be more expensive, and it'll take them longer to build them. But you will continue to have housing. It's just going to be at a much slower pace. And I think, once we run through this, 700 lots that are left in the VDL and futures, then we're going to be looking at probably about 150, 200 homes a year as those infill spots come online.
And one of the other things that concerns me is the yield per development. And when we talk about the the manufactured homes, you almost get to like 1 student per household, right? But everything else is down 0.3, 0.5,
0.6, 0.8.
Wait, and so with the those newer infills, those are more than likely going to be on the lower end of the student yield, right?
Yes.
And so if you would bring up not lawn, but bring up where you had the future lots, the green shaded. Yeah, it was in the elementaries. No, it was a graph. I mean, it was a map.
Showed all
the next one.
the
The
possible
future.
new developments.
Yeah.
With the circles, or this one?
EDLs. Nope.
No, there's a.
No, I saw it.
I think it's the next one. No.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
There we
Oh,
go.
there you go. Yeah.
Right. There's a bunch in the lawn area, and there's a bunch in that Shady Crest area, right? And I know, and I guess Cockrell too. And so you've got a lot more north than you do, well, who can say? But, I mean, it's, like you said, it's scattered, right? But that's the piece that not concerns me, but that's the piece where this is my takeaway. There's a lot of kids coming. And then the other question I had was, do you take into account transfers when you do your
We
demographics?
do whatever the transfer pattern is at the time.
Right.
We hold that transfer pattern. So we don't assume that you have more out of districts coming in.
Okay.
And so whatever in district transferring that's taking place, we assume they stay at their attending campus.
Okay, but you do have like in district,
Yes,
intra-district,
we do
and
know how many kids are transferring in from outside the district, and we hold that number. We
Okay.
don't assume it to
So,
increase.
Okay, that
And
holds good.
remember, the
Okay.
governing factor on that number is once you hit that 92% capacity, they're no longer allowed in that campus.
Right.
And
okay.
so,
Is that a state?
no, that's just
That's
totally
our.
us. Yeah,
That's
totally
us. Okay. I had a question for you. That development that we're seeing across kind of close to Dawson High School right now, that those townhomes that we showed up here, is that more along the lines of what we're going to see in these? Because I mean, the land size there wasn't. I don't think it was big enough to have a full master plan community, but it was sizable enough for these. I mean, it's a pretty large development of townhomes coming in, and there's land out there, specifically I think in the McCard area. Where you'll see more of those developments. Is that a right assumption?
I think there is an increased demand for the townhomes, garden homes, smaller lot sizes, because there's a significant amount of folks that want low maintenance, lock and leave, with minimal maintenance. So yes, I think you could see some more of the garden townhome type.
But you would
products that
still
come
see
through.
you think you'd still see a reduction in
The yield
number of
will still be
students?
low.
Okay.
What's going to happen then is going to come down to the price. So then when we see what the price of that product is, then we will really know if it's an affordable product. Because sometimes the townhome, garden home is masked as high density for affordability. But it's also pretty common to see townhomes that can generate $300,000-$400,000.
Because my immediate concern, looking into the future, is about you said talking about millennials having kids later, moving into probably lower income houses that aren't as expensive because they probably aren't saving for homes; they're saving for travel. When they start having kids, could you see that number start to change in terms of townhomes? That it may start
It's going
going
to
up.
depend on affordability.
Okay.
And so, right now, I would say the Texas housing market has not seen the kind of inflation and growth in home values maybe ever. Now, Houston caught a little bit of a change in that related to the oil crash. So Houston's housing values slowed a little bit, but then you had the hurricane, which then is causing it to go up again because of the shortage. And so we've seen roughly home values have climbed anywhere from 30 to 50% in the last 7 years. The change in home values, home sales value for new home and existing homes. So that has outpaced wage growth for the young families. So young families' wage growth has been 2 to 3%, but the housing growth cost has been 7 to 10%. And so it has caused some challenges for those millennials and the young buyers, and so it's going to be interesting to see what happens over time.
Okay.
And I noticed that you didn't have a price on the on those townhomes over by Dawson.
That's so
They're
new,
just
we
new,
don't
too new?
quite
Okay.
know who the builders are yet.
Right, and that's going to be very interesting because I was actually shocked to see that Baker's Landing was coming in between $250 and $400. I just wasn't. I guess I didn't know, but that's a lot. That's I guess when I bought my house, that's not a starter house. You know what I mean? There's not a lot of starter houses in this that I can see, right? That's
But once again, I mean, you said it earlier.
Yeah.
A large part of Pearland is the medical center,
Yeah.
professionals from Houston.
Yeah.
But I think too, at least from my neighborhood, I'm still in Oak Brook, which what was starter. It's way more expensive than when we bought. But a lot of people are moving from my neighborhood into other neighborhoods in Pearland. I mean, so they're moving up a notch, up to a higher priced home. I have some neighbors that have just moved into that new Massey Ranch stuff and to looking in Baker's Landing and stuff. So they're moving up, and then that means most of them have children, and they're taking their children into the district to another school, and then already next door, someone's moved into the house next door, and they have new kids that came from outside the district that are just going right back into Rustic Oak. So you'll see people moving, but they might be moving right within our district too. So. Huh? Oh yeah, there's a lot. I mean, I know a lot of our friends have done that. We chose to stay in the same house, but I mean, a lot of people we know have done that.
The good news I see with it is that the lower than what was predicted in 2015 gives us a little bit more flexibility at schools, and we may be able to at least take some advantage of that. And for sure, if you remember the November 2016 bond election, we predicated it on the idea that we would not need new schools at least for 8 to 10 years, and that's certainly backed up by this. It's more or less of where to put kids to keep them.
What I have found very interesting is, since I've been on the board, I don't know how many studies we've sat through, and they're all different.
Yeah.
Some have been higher, some have been lower, and it's very, when we look at it, it's very challenging. Obviously, you can't,
What wasn't
Think-
that the initial problem with Dawson, right?
Right.
Was it
Okay,
came in
then when
totally under.
we came on the board right after that, and all the studies showed that it wouldn't be an issue, right? So,
I remember a
Unfortunately,
study-
we build our projections based on the information we know at the time.
Exactly.
right, and then
And
those
so-
things, the city changes that plot to be residential as opposed to being,
Commercial.
You know, 5 years ago, we thought the slowdown in birth rates was related to the recession. So we thought that, the recession, concern for jobs, didn't know if they were going to have a job, and so then we thought that was causing the change in the birth rate. And then the recession ended, and then we realized, wait, it doesn't have anything to do with the recession. It has to do with the millennial group now is pursuing hobbies, pursuing travel. Also, the jobs that they're getting, the wage growth is not high enough so that they can afford. Even apartments are crazy expensive. I have a son and his wife live here in Houston, and they're paying $1,300 for a one-bedroom apartment. And they live near, downtown. She works downtown. He works for AIG, and it's just a different. The millennials have a different challenges. They also have higher student debt, and so when you've got student debt and you've got these challenges, we really are seeing a change now that is
They're waiting till they're older to have
different
children. Yeah.
than it was 5 years ago. So 5 years ago we thought it was the recession. Now we know it's a whole generation change.
If you would go back to show the grade level enrollments, yes. So that birth rate, I guess it starts to pick up.
Yes, and so we are seeing. You can see really over the next 2 years, it's still right at 1,400, and then starting in 2020 is when, because the millennials, as I mentioned, they're 18 to 30. So we do have some of those older millennials that are getting up into the 30s to start changing that birth rate trend. But we do use zip code birth rate data to help us with these projections.
Well, there's just so many unsureties and variables. And just to state, I mean, it's one of the most difficult things as a board to try to work with administration and make these decisions, because I understand, as a parent, you don't want to have to move your kids. You don't want to have to change schools. It's not fun. It isn't. We were in the middle of only one, and it was because Alexander was built. So 1 year we're at SAB, the next year we're at Alexander. In the long run, it worked out great and everything was wonderful. But as a board member, you don't want people to have to move. And we totally understand that. It's probably one of the most difficult things that we have to make a decision on. But that's why you don't want to rush to make a decision, because you don't want to have to go back and change it when, oh, well, I'm sorry, we were wrong, you got to move back. You don't want to have to do that to people and their families. So just have to take so much into consideration to make sure you get it right the first time. So it's as long as
So that it'll last as long
it lasts as long as it can without having to make another rash decision down the road.
Don, would you say it's reasonable that by February or March, all of these variables will be taken into consideration, and any rezoning that we want to do can then be recommended or decided on?
You're saying
I
by
don't want to say February. I want to say by March.
March? I didn't hear what you said. I thought you said February.
I think that's a fair assumption that
Like
we
March.
we could complete an analysis within that time frame.
Okay.
And if that calls for rezoning the following year, it gives time for that
The
to get out.
2018, 19 year?
I don't want to promise yet. I got to
No, I
hear
know,
all
but
the
I was
complexities.
just preparing myself for wrapping my mind around. Any other questions, comments, board?
Good.
Thank you, Mr. Templeton.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate your
Thank
work
you.
very much.
Okay. That's all for note. So it is 8:41. This meeting is adjourned.